Welcome back everybody to more DeFi Kingdoms. In this episode, we are going to be exploring the gardens in DeFi Kingdoms and talking about some very important concepts in cryptocurrency, mainly yield farming and some of the other topics that stem from that, including liquidity pools, automated market makers, and impermanent loss, the benefits of yield farming, and of course, the risks of yield farming. Be sure to check the timestamps if you want to skip straight to a section of your interest. So beginning with yield farming is, as the name implies, investing in order to farm the best yields or return on investment possible. In a typical bank, the usual interest rate that they give you on a savings account is about 0.06%. So if you were to deposit $1,000 into a savings account in a centralized bank in the US, you'd probably be making about $6 a year on that $1,000. Now, I don't know about you, but that's tiny. That's not very much money at all. In cryptocurrency, you can make hundreds of percent on your money, which sounds kind of too good to be true, right? And anytime something sounds too good to be true, there are catches involved, and I'll definitely be talking about those. So first of all, there are different types of yield farming. There are liquidity pools, which is the main focus of this video, talking about the gardens here in DeFi Kingdoms. There's also lending. So there are platforms in cryptocurrency like BlockFi in which you can lend your cryptocurrency out to other people and get a return on your investment that way. And there's also staking, in which you supply your cryptocurrency so that there's enough liquidity for everybody to be able to use it as necessary. So let's talk about liquidity pools. In traditional financing, a central bank controls all of your money, so they can close your account down if they don't like you. If you have a bad credit score, they don't have to give you a loan, they can say no. They essentially can do anything they want with your money. You don't really have any control over it, and you are at the whim of those bankers. Now, in decentralized exchanges in cryptocurrency, there is no person controlling that money. It's literally lines of code that control the money supply. And so, you don't have to worry about some of those human things that affect centralized banking. When it comes to trading, traditionally you need two traders to agree to execute that trade. So for example, if you have some silver and you want to use that silver to buy chickens, you have to go down to the market and hope that there's a trader there who has enough chickens to trade for your silver. If those conditions are not met, you cannot engage in that trade. With a liquidity pool, however, you can trade at any time. The way liquidity pools work is that a bunch of people come together and they deposit some chickens and some silver into a liquidity pool, and then anytime somebody wants to exchange between the two, they just go to that liquidity pool. So for example, again, I'm going to the market with my silver and I want some chickens. Now, right now, everybody's asleep, and so there's nobody trading chickens. However, I can go to the liquidity pool and they have a ton of chickens there, so then I just give them some silver and take some chickens, and that's that. With a liquidity pool, I can trade at any time, anywhere, and it's very simple. The one catch with a liquidity pool is that it must maintain itself at a 50-50 ratio at all times. What that means is that the total value of the chickens in a liquidity pool must equal the total value of silver in that liquidity pool. And that's going to make a little bit more sense as I get into some examples here. How is that 50-50 balance maintained the whole time? Well, that's done with something called an automated market maker. An automated market maker is an algorithm that keeps that 50-50 ratio by increasing the price of one asset that is leaving the pool while lowering the price of the asset that remains in surplus. So again, it uses an algorithm to perfectly balance supply and demand in the pool. This is mainly accomplished with the formula that you see here, x times y equals k, where k must always remain a constant. So let's go through an example so you can understand this. So let's say we have 100 pounds of salt and 100 pounds of gold that we deposit into a liquidity pool. With this 50-50 ratio, 1 gold buys 1 pound of salt. It's in perfect equilibrium. And if we use this on the formula above, x times y equals k, we will see that 100 times 100 equals 10,000. And I made 10,000 in red here, so you can know that that's a constant. Although the number of sugar or the number of gold may go up or down, the 10,000 must always remain the same. So let's say you want to use 4 gold to buy salt. So now the liquidity pool has 104 gold, but how much salt does it have? Well, we have to use the formula that I just outlined. And so we can rearrange algebraically here to solve for the missing value. So if we do 10,000 divided by 104, which is the new value of gold, we end up with 96.15385. And so the new value of salt in the liquidity pool is 96.15385 pounds of salt. And now we also have 104 gold in the liquidity pool. Another way to say this is that 100 minus 96.15385 is 3.84615. So your 4 gold purchased that many pounds of salt from the liquidity pool. To put this in more digestible terms, we can try to estimate the cost of each of these goods by assuming that 1 pound of salt costs $1 and that 1 gold costs $1. And so we can get a new relative cost of salt in the liquidity pool by doing a little bit of division of $100 of the initial investment divided by the new amount of salt in the pool. So we can see that salt now costs $1.04, which is a little bit above the initial value. And that makes sense, right? Because we now have less salt in the liquidity pool, so it should be worth a little bit more. Likewise, we can calculate the relative price for the gold by doing the same math. And we can see that the gold in this liquidity pool is worth about 96 cents. And again, that makes sense because we have more gold now in the pool, so therefore it should be a little bit less. This is simple supply and demand. And now it may seem a little bit dramatic that somebody came in here with 4 gold pieces and they were able to change the prices so dramatically, but this is because there's very low supply in this liquidity pool. If you multiply this out to the millions, then somebody coming in with 4 gold is barely going to affect the price at all, if that makes sense. So how can we make money from this? Well, you can become what's called a liquidity provider. A liquidity provider takes a percent of each trade as a fee. So I'm going to use 0.05% in this example. So let's say you're in a village and you notice the people there are trading a lot of salt and they're trading a lot of gold. And there's a liquidity pool set up which contains 10 pounds of salt and 10 gold. And you notice that the person running this liquidity pool is taking a percent of each trade. In this example, the 0.05%. Now you want to make some money too, so you realize you can go to the next town over and you can buy some salt and you can buy some gold and then contribute to this liquidity pool. So you do just that. You buy 90 pounds of salt and you buy 90 gold, and then you come back to town and you contribute to the liquidity pool. So now the liquidity pool has 100 of each, and you own 90% of the liquidity pool, and therefore you're entitled to 90% of the trading fee profits. So now let's say somebody comes in and they trade 10 pounds of sugar into the liquidity pool. So at a 0.05% trade fee, the liquidity pool is going to make 0.005 pounds of sugar on that trade. And since you own 90% of the liquidity pool, you're entitled to 0.0045 pounds of sugar. And sorry, I keep saying sugar here, but obviously I meant salt. Messed up my little slideshow here, but you get the point. So since the price of sugar is trading in the market for $1 per pound, your profit is 0.0045 per trade in the liquidity pool. Now that doesn't sound like much, but if there are thousands of trades going through every day, you're going to be making a lot of money. So let's say there are 10,000 daily trades of 10 resources. So we can assume the same thing of the example here. So your average profit is about $45 per day. That's a 9,125% annual return on your investment, which dare I say, is much better than the 0.06% that you get in a savings account at a US bank. So like I mentioned, if something sounds too good to be true, there must be a catch, and a catch there is. Because all your neighbors just noticed, oh my God, this person just made over 9,000% return on their investment. I want to get in on this too. So all of a sudden, people are buying a ton of sugar and a ton of gold from other towns, and then they're bringing it back here and they're adding it to the liquidity pool. And before you know it, look how much the liquidity pool has grown. people contributed an additional 10,000 pounds of sugar and 10,000 gold to the liquidity pool. So now the liquidity pool has 10,100 of each. So now you actually only own 0.8911% of the pool, and you're only entitled to 0.000044555 pounds of sugar, or $0.000044555 per trade of 10 resources. So you can see your profit has gone down dramatically. So assuming the same volume of trades, 10,000 daily trades, you're now only making about 45 cents per day with your trade, and your initial 9,125% return on investment has dropped down to 90.35%. And that's still a really hefty percentage, but you can see how quickly those percentages can change. So that's the catch of liquidity pools. You'll often find liquidity pools in cryptocurrency giving you 500% return on investment, which is great. But as more people catch on to that, more people are going to be putting their money into that liquidity pool to get those rewards. And so the relative percent of what you're making is going to go down as more people get into that liquidity pool. So you may have noticed that even though you only own less than 1% of this liquidity pool, you're still getting a 90% return on your investment, which is outrageously good. So what's the risk here? What are the risks of a liquidity pool? Well, let's talk about them because there are several. Number one, there's the risk of asset depreciation. And this is probably the biggest risk. This happens when the price of either asset in the liquidity pool or both of them go down in value. So, for example, let's say you find a great liquidity pool that offers a 50% return on your investment for 1 year very consistently. So on January 1st, 2022, the price of 1 pound of sugar is $1 and the price of 1 gold is $1. So you throw down $20,000 to provide 10,000 of each to the pool. At the end of the year on December 31st, you've earned 50% of fees in gold, so you now have 10,000 pounds of sugar and 20,000 gold. However, that same year, the price of sugar crashed to 81 cents and the price of gold just absolutely collapsed to 32 cents. So the new value is 8,100 in sugar and 6,400 in gold for a total of 14,500. So you actually ended up losing $5,500 this year, or 27.5% on your investment. So even though you were getting 50% returns, because both of these assets depreciated in value, you ended up losing a lot of money. So this is one of the risks of investing in a liquidity pool. Now another risk is much more subtle, and that is called impermanent loss. So in this example, let's imagine that there is a market that sells 1 pound of sugar for $1 and it sells gold for $1. So you decide you're going to set up a business. You're going to set up a liquidity pool. So you end up buying 10,000 pounds of sugar and 10,000 gold, and you're going to start charging people a fee so that they can trade between these two things. Now, all of a sudden, the price of gold jumps up to $1.15, which is great because you own a lot of gold, and so your assets are appreciating in value. That's really good. Well, guess what? A really smart merchant notices something very interesting here. They notice that they can go to the market and buy 1 pound of sugar for $1, and then they can go to your liquidity pool and change that pound of sugar for 1 gold, and then return to the market and sell that gold for a profit. So they're essentially taking advantage of the price discrepancy in the market and your liquidity pool to make a profit. So he's a humble merchant. He doesn't have too much money, but he does have $100. So he invests $100 and buys 100 pounds of sugar at the market, and then he goes over to your liquidity pool and deposits that sugar. So now your liquidity pool has 10,100 pounds of sugar, and our little merchant is down $100. So then we use the automated market maker, like we discussed earlier, to decide how much our pool is going to give back to him in gold. And we're going to use our friendly formula, X times Y equals K. And just trust me on this one, once the math is done, at the end of the day, it's going to give him 99.01 gold for his 100 sugar that he deposited. So our merchant is now down $100, but he has 99.01 gold, and our liquidity pool is up to 10,100 pounds of sugar and 9,900.99 gold. So now the merchant is going to take that gold that he got at our liquidity pool back to the market and sell it for $1.15, and he's going to get $113.86 for that trade, and boom, he just made $13.86 in profit, which is very nice. Now, he could have made more profit. He could have mathematically worked out exactly how much sugar he could have traded into our liquidity pool to get the max profit out of it, because there is going to be a point of diminishing return. So if he buys too much sugar, the price of gold relatively in the liquidity pool is going to be too high and cut into his profit, but there is a perfect middle ground there. So merchants like these are called arbitrage traders, and they look for discrepancies in the markets. They look at all the different exchanges, and if they notice that one exchange is selling something really cheap and another one is selling it really expensive, they can go and buy the cheap one, go to the other exchange and sell it for more money and make some profit that way. So what's really interesting about this is that there are arbitrage trading bots which scour all of the crypto exchanges and lots of liquidity pools, and they look for all these little price discrepancies and then start executing trades to make a lot of money, which is very cool. As a liquidity pool provider, we don't really care what these merchants are doing. We're interested in how we can make money. So we noticed that the merchant came in, they got our gold for cheap, and they're saying they're going to go sell it at our market for expensive. Hey, that sounds interesting to me. Why don't I do the same thing? Why don't I close my liquidity pool, take my sugar, take my gold, and go sell them at the market? So that's exactly what we can do. So we take our 10,100 pounds of sugar that we have after that merchant came through, and we sell it at the market for $1 each, and we make $10,100. We also take our 9,900 gold and sell it at the market for $1.15 each, and we make $11,386, which is great. We add that all up, and we sold all our assets in our liquidity pool for $21,486.15. We initially put in $20,000 of an investment, so hey, look at that. That is $1,486.15 in profit, and we're not even counting the fee that we should have charged that merchant. So this is a win, right? Everybody won. We made money. This is great. What's the risk here? I don't get it. Well, if you're paying attention here, you may have noticed that actually, even though all these numbers are green here, you actually lost money. You suffered what's called impermanent loss. How does that work? Well, let's imagine that we never bought a liquidity pool to begin with. Let's say that instead of setting up a liquidity pool, we went out and we bought our 10,000 pounds of sugar or 10,000 gold, and we just held on to it. We didn't make a liquidity pool. Well, when the price of gold went up in the market, we could then go ahead and resell everything that we had. So we can sell our 10,000 pounds of sugar back at $1 each for $10,000, and then we can sell our gold for $1.15, and that gives us a total of $21,500 minus our initial investment of $20,000. That gives us a $1,500 profit if we had never set up a liquidity pool. So if we never had set anything up, we'd have $1,500 in profit, compared to previously when we set up a liquidity pool and the merchant came by and took our money. We only had $1,486 in profit, and so we actually ended up losing $13.86 just by having our assets in a liquidity pool. If we had just held on to them and not done anything with them, we would have made more money. What's important to realize though, as the name implies, this is impermanent loss, meaning this loss is not permanent. The only time it becomes a permanent loss is when you cash out. Then that impermanent loss becomes permanent. So, for example, let's say we did have the merchant come by and take some of our gold, and this is our liquidity pool, 10,100 pounds of sugar and 9,900 gold. Well, let's say that the price of gold comes down again, and now we're back to $1 for the price of gold. Well, if we were to sell our liquidity pool now, we could sell our 10,100 pounds of sugar for $1 each and make, and I'm sorry, this is wrong, but it should be $10,100, and then we can sell our 9,900 gold for $1, and I'm sorry, this is also wrong, but it should be $9,900.99. And so that would also give us a total of about 20,000. I'm just kind of rounding out this last cent here. So that would be 20,000 minus the 20,000 we would have made if we never even set up a liquidity pool. So our impermanent loss is 0, and we essentially didn't have any loss at all. So I hope that helps to explain some of the concepts involved in decentralized financing, including yield farming and liquidity pools and automated market makers, impermanent loss, so on and so forth. Now there is this really handy chart here that helps to show you how much you can expect to lose in terms of impermanent loss. So here at 100% of your initial value, you're not losing any money, you're losing 0%. Now let's say that one of the assets, for example sugar, doubles in price, it goes up 200%. If you notice, if you go all the way across here, you're still not losing that much money. This is what, maybe 5% or so? So it's really not too bad. Now if it goes up 500%, so if the price of gold goes up 5 times, then you're really only losing 25%, which is not bad for a giant fluctuation in price like that. Now it can go the other way. Let's say the price of sugar goes crashing down to like 20% over here. So if it crashes 20%, you're looking at a, what is that? I don't know, like a 28% loss in impermanent loss. So this is a handy chart to be able to look at. There's also this very handy impermanent loss calculator on whiteboardcrypto.com. And so there are different ways that you can do it, but I like the simple one here. So let's say that the starting price of one of the tokens you're staking is 100, and the starting price of the other one is about 700 or 1700. And then the ending price here is going to be, let's say the first token went down 20%, so it's 80, but then the second token went up in price and now it's 2,000. You can see that there's a big fluctuation in price here. So one of your tokens went down 20%, the other went up a little bit, but your impermanent loss is only 1.83%, which is really not too bad, especially when you consider that you're getting some of those yields by staking your currency on a liquidity pool. Your yield should ideally more than make up for this impermanent loss. So why am I spending all this time looking at all this math and explaining all these concepts and going in depth on some of these topics? Well, in my opinion, if you're going to be investing your money, which is what we're doing here in DeFi Kingdoms, you should really know and understand what you're getting into. You don't just want to blindly put money into something. You want to understand how it works, you want to analyze the risks involved, and you want to be able to think about those things. So let's boil down everything that we learned. So what are the risks with this investment? Well, the biggest risk, in my opinion, is going to be asset devaluation. So whenever you're staking some of these cryptocurrencies, you want to make sure that you believe in the long-term vision of the cryptocurrency. For example, the Jewel token of DeFi Kingdoms, if you think that the game doesn't really have a future, then guess what? The Jewel token is going to go down in value and you're going to lose a lot of money. But if you think that it's going to expand and you think a lot of people are going to get into this and it's going to grow in the future, then you should expect the price of Jewel to go up in value and expect a good return on your investment. So one of the things you want to do to mitigate the potential of losing money through asset depreciation is really researching the tokens and the projects that you're investing in to make sure that you at least believe that they have long-term potential and have a good future in terms of growth and not a big risk in terms of losing value. Personally, I do think crypto gaming is just in its infancy and is going to grow exponentially, and I think DeFi Kingdoms is a really cool project, so I do think it's going to grow in value in the future, at least in the near future, so I feel comfortable investing in some of these cryptocurrencies. So that's how you mitigate your risk in terms of asset depreciation. You go out, you do the research, and you only invest in projects you believe in. But how do we mitigate impermanent loss? Well, the main takeaway lesson from impermanent loss, the whole reason we went through all the math and all those examples, is to really highlight the point that the only time you can have impermanent loss is when there's big fluctuations and changes in the prices of the two liquidity tokens relative to each other. So what I like to do is when I'm staking into a liquidity pool, I want to make sure that I'm using two assets that tend to follow each other in terms of price. So if one goes up in price, the other one should also be going up in price a little bit. And if one falls, so should the other likewise. You don't want to invest in divergent tokens, meaning tokens that seem to do the opposite of each other. So one thing that I like to do is I like to go to coinmarketcap.com, where you can look at the price and the charts of different cryptocurrencies, and then I'll take snapshots of them and bring them into Photoshop. So the initial liquidity pool that I'm going to be participating in the game is going to be between the one token and the jewel token. Now remember, you need to put up 50-50 ratio of two different liquidity assets in order to participate in a pool. So you can't just pick one and go all in on that. It has to be an exact 50-50 value split between two. So I chose the one token and the jewel token. So I'll put their snapshots here on Photoshop, and I like to do it by week, by month, by year. Although Jewel has not been out for over a year, so I can only get the week and month charts for them. And so what I like to do is, let's look at the month charts. So I'm going to hide all the layers except the 2 months, and then I'm going to change the opacity so I can overlay them on top of each other. Like that. So you can kind of see both of them together here. And you can notice that it essentially follows the same pattern. So when one is going up, so is the other one. When there's a big dip, the other one dips. Over here, there was this big dip. They both dip together. All these little peaks here that you're seeing, you can see that they follow each other pretty closely. So nothing's going to be a perfect match, obviously. The main thing that I'm looking at is that these tokens are not divergent. I don't want to see, for example, if one is going up, the other is crashing, or if one is crashing, the other one's going up. More or less, this is following the same trend, so I'm not going to be expecting too much impermanent loss from this pair. Now, likewise, we can look at the week. So let's put those up, and then let me change the opacity here. And you can see it looks a little bit more chaotic because there's less data points in 1 week compared to 1 month. But in general, it's also following the same pattern. When one goes up, so does the other one over here going up, and this one's going up as well. This big crash here, they both crash together. These little peaks, they're both rising together. So I'm not going to be expecting too much impermanent loss from these tokens. And this is just something I like to do to make sure when I'm getting into a liquidity pool. So one last thing you want to do is to make sure you understand the rules that you're playing with. So it's a good idea to check out exactly how the garden works, how the liquidity pool in DeFi Kingdom works, so you know exactly what you're getting into. So a good place to come to do that is in the wikis, and also you can go on the Discord channel and ask lots of questions if you don't understand anything. This first section is just talking about the garden and what a liquidity pool is. We spent a lot of time talking about that, but this here is kind of interesting. There's an issuance schedule with the Jewel token. So let me just read this for you guys real quick. The issuance of Jewel as rewards for staking liquidity pool tokens in the garden is scheduled to change during each consecutive period of time, which we refer to as an epoch. Each epoch is 302,000 blocks on the Harmony blockchain, and the length of time of each epoch depends on the average block speed of Harmony. So this is saying that they're making a time frame in the game called an epoch that's about 302,000 blocks on the Harmony blockchain, and it takes the Harmony blockchain some time to process these blocks, and on average, each block is processed in about 2 seconds. Some of them may be a little less, a little more, but in general, it's going to be about 2 seconds. So an epoch at the end of the day turns out to be about 1 week or so. So when the game first came out, the first epoch, you were getting a lot of Jewel tokens in the garden. So people who got in the game early, they were getting a lot of Jewel for staking in the liquidity pool. Now, as time goes on, you get less and less. So you may be thinking, what's the point of doing this? It's just going to get lower and lower. Well, the reason they did this is to prevent inflation. If they just kept pumping out a ton of Jewel, then the value itself of the Jewel, when you go to trade it in for actual money, it's going to be really low. So this is one of the ways that they tried to deal with inflation or possible inflation of the Jewel token. So really, they don't want that to be a problem, and that's why they came up with this thing. Next is the locking model. And this is a mechanism that the developers put in place to prevent people from quickly coming in and then dumping all of their assets the classic what's called pump and dump in the stock market or in the crypto market, where people come in, they buy a ton and drive the price up and immediately just dump it. And the only people who are left hurting are the developers of the project, because their project just got pumped and dumped. And then everybody else who was invested in the project, they just see all their assets diminish in price. So one way that they're trying to deal with that to prevent it from happening in DeFi Kingdoms is with a locking model. So a portion of jewels grown in the gardens can be harvested immediately, meaning the rewards you get from the liquidity pool, you can get your rewards immediately. Although the rest are dispersed deep underground and are locked. These locked jewels will slowly work their way upward and will be rewarded to the owners in time, but until unlocked cannot be used in any way. So you can't take it out of DeFi Kingdoms and trade it for money. They're essentially vested in the game and you can't take them out for a while. So once claimed locked tokens remain locked until the end of Epoch 51. So that's going to be around the third quarter of this year, around fall. And then at that point, the jewel token will begin to unlock ratably over the next year. So it's fully unlocked only in the third quarter of 2023. So a lot of the rewards that you're going to be getting in the garden, you'll be able to use immediately. But some of them are going to be locked to prevent you from just dumping the token. Again, they don't want a lot of people just quickly getting Jewel and selling it. They want the value of Jewel to increase over time. And one of the ways to do that is to prevent people from immediately selling it. And so this is one of the ways they're trying to do that. This also follows a time frame. So for people who got in early in that first epoch, only 5% of the rewards they were getting could they actually withdraw immediately, and the other 95% were locked. Now it's important to make a distinction here. Let's say you invest $100 in the game. It doesn't mean that once you've invested $100 that you can only take $5 out. That's not how that works. This is referring to the rewards. So let's say you put $100 in the game and you put it in the liquidity pool for a month, and let's say you made $10 in the liquidity pool. So now your total value is $110. This 5% refers only to the profit. So only that $10 that you made in profit, you can only take 5% of that out. So 50 cents. So if you wanted to withdraw all your money, you would be able to withdraw your initial 100 investment and then 50 cents from the $10 that you made in rewards. The other $9.50 would be locked, and eventually they'll become unlocked for you to be able to take them out. So the percentage that is immediately unlocked goes up for every epoch in the game by 2% until after Epoch 51, where any rewards claimed thereafter are 100% unlocked. So every epoch, 2% of what you earn is immediately unlocked compared to the previous one. Here they give an example. So people putting in the first epoch will have 5% unlocked, 95% locked. In Epoch 2, it'll be 7% and 93%. In the third epoch, 9% are unlocked, 91% are locked, so on and so forth, all the way up until Epoch 51. This shows some tables and additional examples so you know exactly what's going on here. Now, another interesting thing is the locking model can be manipulated with hero NFTs, which I will talk a little bit more in depth in a future video. But heroes in this game have lots of special abilities, and one of the abilities that certain heroes have would be to mine all of the locked tokens. One amazing and unique feature of DeFi Kingdoms that sets us apart from any other DeFi exchange out there today is the ability for heroes to mine locked Jewel tokens, unlocking them early. Each hero's stats will determine their ability to unlock Jewel. So that's a really cool mechanic there. So here they talk a little bit about the rationale. Like I mentioned earlier, the whole reason for locking jewels is that the model helps the project retain value for the long term and ensures that only those who see long-term vision of DeFi Kingdoms jumps in and earns the maximized rewards available to early adopters. Further, this locking model both balances the rewards needed to attract early providers of the necessary liquidity against the long-term interest of a sustainable price for an in-game token, and concurrently provides early liquidity pool stakers a strategic choice to claim early and compound their staking rewards at the cost of locking more of their Jewel rewards until Epoch 51. So there's a graph here that kind of explains how the unlocking is going to work. It looks like it's going to be fully unlocked in the third quarter here of 2023. So again, part of doing a research before investing in a liquidity pool is you must believe in the long-term vision of the project. If you don't believe in DeFi Kingdoms, if you think it's going to go down, if you think it's a trash project, if you don't believe in it, then there's really no point in investing in it, because if you're in it for the quick run, you may not be able to take as many profits. If you're in it for the long run, then you may really start to see some potential there. The final thing that's very, very important for you to know, this is very important. There are deposit and withdrawal fees in the game. Actually, I take that back. There is no deposit fees. There are no deposit fees for staking liquidity pool tokens in the gardens. However, whenever you withdraw money that you put in a liquidity pool, there is a withdrawal fee, and you have to be very aware of that. Why would they do this? This is to protect against something called flash loans. Flash loans and flash trades are extremely interesting because it allows somebody with no money to be able to deploy a smart contract to execute millions of dollars worth of trading in a matter of seconds. That sounds pretty crazy, right? How can somebody with no money be able to trade millions of dollars on the exchange? Well, this is how it works. I'm going to try to illustrate it here. So we have our humble merchant here. He doesn't have much money, but he does have some coding skills. So he makes a smart contract, and that smart contract is going to interact with a decentralized exchange to borrow $4 million. Now you may be asking, how is somebody with no money able to just borrow $4 million? Well, the way this works is that as long as he pays back that money with interest within the same transaction, he's able to borrow it. Now, if the smart contract ends its execution unable to pay back that loan, he can't even take it out to begin with. I know it sounds a little weird, but as long as he pays back that loan immediately, then he can take it. So with the smart contract, he goes to a decentralized exchange, he borrows $4 million, and now he has $4 million in his pocket. That smart contract then takes that $4 million to a market, which has some really good prices. So this market is selling a pound of sugar for 90 cents, and it's also trading gold for $1.20. So with his $4 million, he's able to buy 4,444,444 pounds of sugar. Then that smart contract takes that sugar to a liquidity pool and trades it for gold. And using the formula that we're accustomed to now, X times Y equals K, the liquidity pool determines that for all that sugar that the merchant is trading, they're able to give him 4,255,319 gold. Now the smart contract is going to take all that gold back to the market and sell it at a big profit at $1.20 per gold, and so he sells all of it for $5,106,382. The next step in the smart contract is to repay that loan. So he's going to repay the initial $4 million that he borrowed plus $600,000 in 15% interest on that loan. And so this smart contract is able to execute only because by borrowing the money, he was able to repay it immediately. This all happens within seconds. If any of the steps here along this chain broke down and the contract had an error or was unable to execute the contract at any point here, this whole thing would fall apart and he would never be able to borrow the $4 million to begin with. So once he repays all that money, he takes home all the profit, which is $506,382. Is that crazy or what? That is flash loans and flash trading. Now, obviously, this is a pretty dramatic example. Usually, you're not going to see these huge price discrepancies in the market, but it's just an example of how powerful the blockchain can be and how people can make ridiculous amount of money with little investment if they know how to play their cards right. So you may have noticed that the exchange made $600,000 in interest, and then the merchant made about $500,000 in profit. So where did all that money come from? Where did that $1.1 million come from? Well, it came from the liquidity pool in terms of impermanent loss. So the liquidity pool is ultimately the one that paid all this money to the bank and to the merchant. And so now you can see why, if you're running a liquidity pool, you really want to program things in your smart contract to protect you from these flash trades and flash loans, or else you're going to be losing millions of dollars in terms of impermanent loss. So in order to prevent that from happening, there is a withdrawal fee. So depending how quickly you withdraw your money, after putting it in, you have to pay a fee. That also prevents pump and dumps like we talked about earlier. So for example, if you take your money out in the same block, like what would happen with a flash loan, you're paying a 25% fee. So if you put in $100, you're going to be losing $25 in fees, which is crazy. Obviously, you don't want to do that. So you want to pay attention to this schedule here. So it's not too bad. So if you wait at least an hour, you're already down 8%. If you wait 5 days, it's only a 1% fee. After 5 days, but before 2 epochs, which is 2 weeks, so between 5 days and 2 weeks, only 0.5%. Now, if you want the lowest rate, you want to do 4 epochs, which is about a month, then you're not paying a very big fee at all. Now, all things considered, considering the yield you're going to be earning on this, if you're paying, 1% or below, it's not that big of a deal. This is mainly a protectionary thing to prevent the flash loans and pump and dumps from ruining the liquidity pools. So that's a lot of information. I want to congratulate you if you've been watching the video up to this point. Most people by now would have seen that this turned into a math lecture and exited out of the video, because a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space just want to be able to put their money somewhere and watch it grow astronomically. But really, if you want to be making good money in cryptocurrency, you want to understand what you're doing. You want to know what you're getting into. So now with all this knowledge, let's go ahead and apply everything we've learned about these concepts, about liquidity pools and loans and automated market makers and impermanent loss. Let's apply it to DeFi Kingdoms and let's get some money going in the garden. In order to begin, we need to go to the marketplace to set up our liquidity pool. Now over here on the right, you will see a vendor that trades items from quests. But for right now, I want to focus here on the trader, because first we need to get some jewel tokens. Remember, to put things in the liquidity pool, we must have a perfect 50-50 ratio. So I'm going to do a 50-50 ratio of jewel and the Harmony 1 token. And so let me pull out my calculator. I want to keep about 5% of my 1 token in order to be able to cover some transaction fees. So I'm going to put half of my 95% of 1 tokens into jewel, and we can see the result here of how much that is. 1,615. So I'm going to convert 1,615 1 tokens into jewels. That's going to get me about 26.4 jewel at the current rate. Going to go ahead and hit swap and confirm that. As always, this is going to pop up on MetaMask. Got to approve the transaction there and wait for it to go through. Now, you may not be able to see the jewel token in your MetaMask right away, so you can click here to add jewel to MetaMask. That way you can actually see it. So you can add the token. And then you should be able to now see all of those assets in your MetaMask wallet. So there you can see my 1 token and my jewel token. Now I need to put these 2 in a liquidity pool, and I need to come here to the Druid to be able to do that. Looking for some seeds? Merge tokens to create new seeds, or allow me to use my magic to split your existing seeds into their original parts. Deposit your seeds in the gardens when you're ready to begin harvesting rewards. Liquidity providers earn a 0.2% fee on all trades proportional to their share of the pool. Fees are added to the pool, accrue in real time, and can be claimed by withdrawing your liquidity. So you can do create pool here, and this is a little bit more complex, but you can get any 2 valid tokens and create your own liquidity pool. That's not really what we want to do. We want to contribute to an existing pool already, and the way you do that is by clicking buy seeds. From here, you want to create the pairs. So again, I'm going to do Harmony 1 token to Jewel. And you will notice that if I try to put the max number of 1 tokens, I don't have enough Jewel to cover it. So what I'll do is I'll click max Jewel instead. And then next thing, if this is the first time you're doing this, you're going to have to click approve Jewel. And that's only going to allow the game to access your Jewel in your MetaMask wallet. So it's kind of tricky because the first time you have to confirm 2 transactions. This actually hasn't bought the liquidity pool seeds yet. You have to click supply in order for that to go through, but I'm going to show you another way to do this as well. You can do it directly at the garden. So welcome to the garden. There are several things here: a seed box, harvest, and then there is this guy as well. Actually, yeah, let me speak with him. Horticulturalist Henry, I'm busy harvesting your crops right now, but if you drop your seeds off at the seed box, I'll plant them right away. So if you already had your seeds from the Druid, you could find the appropriate liquidity pool here, jewel to 1 token, and you would be able to deposit right away. So there's the one I want to get into. So I would be able to deposit, but I don't have any seeds yet because I never clicked that supply button. So I could do it here as well. Let me show you how. So at least the first time, it can feel a little bit confusing because it feels like you have to approve the transaction like a million times. But if you click deposit, you can set up the 50-50 liquidity pool here as well. And click add the jewel and 1 token combination. And then I'm going to put the max supply of jewel that I have. And that's going to automatically calculate how much jewel I get. So I'm going to click supply. And then I'm going to confirm supply to get the jewel /1 pool tokens. Of course, as always, must confirm it on MetaMask. And once that transaction goes through, you're not done yet. You're just confirming the supply of that new token. Buying this seed creates a new token, which is the liquidity pool token for Jewel N1. And so I'm adding this so MetaMask can keep tabs on it. The next step is then to allow MetaMask to access this new Jewel 1 token. So you have to approve it in MetaMask. That is step number 2. Confirm that. And believe it or not, you're not done quite yet. There is one final step, which is to actually deposit these seeds. So I'm going to deposit a max amount of them. Approve one more time on MetaMask. This one should be the final one, thank God. And there you go. I think we're done. Yep, everything just refreshed, so you can see I got seeds deposited, and I'm already earning some rewards on it, 0.0001. And it's only going to go up from here, baby. Hell yeah, here we go. We're in the game now. This is how the gardens work, and hopefully you can kind of understand what you're in here doing now after going over all those examples that I made on the PowerPoints. So you can also leave this area and you can go over to the harvest box and you can see your liquidity pool accumulating some interest, which is great. So I hope you learned a lot this episode, and in the next one we'll kind of check to see how much money we're earning, and we're going to talk about new topics like heroes and quests and all the other fun things that there are to do in this game, all the cool ways there are to earn money. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a fruitful harvest in your garden. I'll see you next time.